the old adage of, when a plane, is going down and they talk about, putting the oxygen mask on, they talk about, put it on yourself first and then you can help others. Like, you can't motivate and tap into people's energy and potential if you're not feeling it yourself, right? If you come in every day, hating life, mad at what you're doing, unhappy in your current situation, right? It's hard to inspire happiness in others. And so I'd say, like, it has to start with you. Like, that's like base camp to any of this stuff that we're going to talk about today. That if you can't get to centered yourself, then it's going to be really hard for you to really kind of transfer and tap into others' potentials.
Welcome to the Rising Leader Podcast, bringing forth the new wave of rising leadership and helping leaders find purpose, connection, and results. This is your host, founder of Alluviance, Alex Kremer. All right, welcome back to the Rising Leader Podcast. And if this is your first time being on the show, welcome. We are so grateful to have you here. This is your host, Alex Kremer. I am unbelievably excited to be welcoming Mr. John Eitel onto the podcast. First off, John, what up, man? It's good to see you.
Hey, Alex. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing awesome, man. It's interesting because you are the first person that I am doing my second podcast with. Now, the funny thing is you're not a repeat guest on the Rising Leader Podcast, but about, maybe 4, maybe even 5 years ago when I was hosting the sales engagement podcast at Outreach, you came onto the show, and it was like, since then, I was like, I think I need to kind of befriend this guy, John, and just see if I could keep that relationship flowing.
It was a great moment. Actually, if I remember correctly, we were like in peak pandemic, like first 6 months of the lockdown here. I think we were in shelter in place, and it was a crazy time. I had just started a new gig. I was in a pretty intense run, and we connected. And I was going to say, we quickly hit it off, and I think actually chatted after the podcast and it stayed in touch. And I'd say became fast friends. Through the fire, we forged a friendship there.
Man, and now you've recruited me here to Austin. I mean, I wouldn't be in Austin. So I'm in my second day in Austin, and it's solely because of you. I hope you know that.
I appreciate it. I was gonna actually steal the thunder and say, welcome to Austin. You've always struck me as an Austin personality. So Austin welcomes you here, and I'm excited to have you. It's going to be great to have you in this community. You just fit the mold. So it's great to have you here, Alex.
Oh man, it's good. I can already feel it, man. I bought myself a truck. I got some cowboy boots. I do not have a cowboy hat yet, but I'm going to get barbecue tonight. So
you're more Texan than me, man. I was going to say, I don't think I have half those things. So kudos to you.
Oh man, well, you're the one who told me to get my Tacova boots, so I'm in it now.
That's awesome. Great company to support there for sure.
So John, I'll just kind of give a little bit of background on you for those who don't know your background. So you are currently the Chief Sales Officer at Demandbase. I think you've been there for just about 8 months, maybe 9 months going on there now. Previously, you were the Global VP of Sales and Success at Canva for almost 3 years. And I mean, I think while you were there, I mean, first off, that's when I interviewed you on the Sales Engagement Podcast, but that's right when Canva was just completely starting to blow up. So I'm assuming you have some wonderful stories and some oh my God, what's it like to be at a rocket ship company like that?
So that was a fun run, and you caught me right as we were starting that sprint. I think when you and I spoke, we were about 200 employees. We quickly ballooned up to almost over 3,000 in 2.5 years. So it was crazy, and scaling people, processes, systems, selling like crazy. And then, let's pepper in that their world was in a complete, state of, kind of tailspin with everything going on. So it was a bit of a crazy time for sure.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. So Canva's headquartered in Australia, and you were based in Texas. So you were working some crazy hours while you were doing that in the heart of COVID.
Yeah. Setting the stage. My actual full remit was to open up North America for them. So you were absolutely right. Canva's an Australian-based company, and they had always been in Australia, and they made this bold new bet to actually, move to the U.S. So I was hired to open up the U.S. while they were also moving into B2B. So they had actually seen some traction with their offering and started just selling it to large companies. And so Canva has been this, really great story of product-led growth, but it's been largely consumer product-led growth, right? And so it was tackling a new market, a new audience, bringing a new product to market, building a new team in a new region. And so to completely set the stage in context, I mean, I wound down my post at my other job. I, went to Australia for 3 weeks to onboard, spent time with the founders, got really excited and ready to go launch all these things in the US. And as I was flying back, it was the last normal day in the world. So it was the day that probably we all remember and we'll continue to remember forever. But it was the day I was in the air for 18 hours. We was the day that we all got texts, kind of every 15 minutes with more bad news, baseball games, basketball games, school, work, everything kind of just being put on pause and hold. And so, I think I actually, took off, and the last kind of words I heard were go back to Austin, go get an office and go build a team. And I remember landing and thinking, I don't think I need that office anymore. And I might quite possibly need to slow roll this team and, let's figure this out. And so, there was a lot of like improvise, overcome, figure it out on the move. I think actually, the initial plan was for me to hire, the first 30, 40 people and send them to Australia and get them fully indoctrinated with their culture. And then they'd come back and be ready to run fast and kind of scale and multiply that culture here in the US. And immediately at that moment, the Australia border shut down. So I lost the ability to send people over. I had 3 weeks of onboarding maybe under my belt, and I was quickly, doing recruiting, onboarding. They sent me about 50 laptops. I remember my kids actually making the joke that this office that I'm in right now looked like a Mac store.
Oh my gosh.
Stacked with accessories. But we figured it out. And that was actually a really fun time. And you're absolutely right. Like, I think a lot of the things that attracted me to the opportunity was the excitement of being able to bring a brand that I knew and loved into kind of my home audience and market here. And I got the chance to do that. But I did probably about halfway in think, okay, gosh, I didn't think about the time zone overlap or the very much lack of time zone overlap. And for those that know, Australia, has, very little overlap with us. I think as we're kind of winding down our day, they're beginning their day. And also you have an offset of days. So, their Monday is our Sunday, and, our Friday is their Saturday. And so, I made for a lot of long nights, work over the weekends. And during that time also, we opened up EMEA. So I took on actually responsibility for opening up our European presence, which meant like I just didn't sleep. So it was, like I said, fast and furious time at a time where the company was going through like amazing, kind of growth in their valuation, amazing opportunities for us to just kind of be able to take this in kind of new places. So there was a lot of excitement to it, which always can give you some energy or give you some extra kind of pep in your step when you're trying to figure those things out.
Yeah, man, it's funny. I was going to say it only took you about half the time of being there until you realized that those hours were going to be a little bit tough.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong. You have three kids or 4 kids?
I've got 2 kids.
You have 2 kids. Okay.
2 boys, 2 teenage boys. And so, my wife actually gets the funniest joke because, as I was in Australia, spending 3 weeks there, she was home alone holding down the fort. Every day got more unsettled. I think she was calling me and saying like, I think they're going to cancel South by Southwest. And I remember thinking like, nah, it's never going to happen. And she called and said, hey, I think they're running out of toilet paper at the local grocery store. Like, this thing's getting kind of serious here. And I remember thinking like it's getting blown out of proportion. But anyways, her last commentary to me was like, I hear the borders may shut down. And if you get stuck there, I've been at home, with 2 teenage boys for 3 weeks. You're swimming home if that's the case.
You are getting home, whether you like it or not. What's funny, it's like I'm assuming that once you got onto the flight, what your marching orders were in terms of build out a team after that 18-hour flight and you landed, your marching orders were completely different. It was like, okay, restructuring what the actual plan and strategy looks like here.
Yeah, it was. And it was interesting. I mean, I think it was actually probably good that we had this kind of like, ability to just go heads down and focus. I think if you can find a silver lining and being like locked in your house, because when you are, launching a new market, launching a new offering, like we had no B2B systems. I mean, I think actually when you and I spoke, I was building my entire tech stack from the ground up for B2B. And so, I was going out and thinking about like, we need Salesforce, we need outreach, like we need all these different tools that we need to get up and running with. And I remember, folks like you all saying, well, tell me what your tech stack is. And I'm like, I think we've got like email and Slack. And so, this is, again, kind of a whole net new motion for them. And so, thankfully, I felt like in 6 months, I set up, sales systems, I built teams, I got an operation off the ground, in 6 months, which I think I should probably have taken me 18 months in a regular time situation when I wasn't able to kind of go to, heads down and focus and wasn't having to travel a bunch. And so in some ways it benefited us getting, kind of things really grounded quickly.
So it's interesting. It's like, I've said this before, but it's like the 2017 through 2020 era of tech felt like the golden age of tech. Everybody was selling, everybody had budget. It was a grow at all costs. It was a wonderful time to be in tech, a wonderful time to be in sales. And then this little thing called COVID happened. And it feels like, really paradigms have completely shifted. I mean, especially within the tech world, it's one of, I would say, it's not even just like hard in tech and sales and leadership right now. Things are just changing so quickly right now. Sure, you've got the market where, the people don't have budget, quotas are getting harder to hit, whatnot. But I think more importantly, sales professionals are struggling to figure out, so why am I here again? Like even the people who are performing at a very high level, they're still questioning. So what am I missing here? Like there's a gap in today's market. I think people are more than ever stressed as hell. People are more than ever burnt out. People are more than ever, I would say, feeling a certain sense of loneliness because they're working from home, selling a product they may or may not care about, trying to hit a quota that may or may not be attainable. Like it's harder than ever before. And, I know that we've had quite a few conversations, walking on, what is it, Ladybird Lake, where we walked last time?
Yeah.
We met up early in the morning and we were talking just a lot about what does it take to lead a sales team, right? I mean, I personally, so I lead an account executive team and I lead an SDR team. And having to figure out how to, I think you coined it so well. It's like, how do you manage the energy of other people? How do you manage the energy of your team to actually get them all moving in the same direction? And so I'd love for you to just kind of, talk about how do you go about managing the energy of other people and support your team that way?
Yeah, it's a good topic. Look, I think it's interesting. What I love about your podcast is, you really hone in on like people figuring out skills that are so important to them that it probably took, folks like me a decade to figure out. And I would say, it was something that I figured out prior to the confusion, chaos, and craziness that you described. And so I think it makes me more equipped probably to help. And I would love to share, maybe my learnings to help others get through this because it's crazy. We really have, we in a lot of ways have messed up a lot of people, coming into this profession. I do feel like if your only sample size of, kind of coming into sales is the last 3 years, then you really missed out on a lot of things. And you really got set up in probably not the best foundation. And I'll go into some details on that because I do agree, like there's a whole subtopic we can talk about that. But I do think, look, it is a very mental sport we play. So I feel like there is a lot of like, how do you manage your own head and others' heads here? And I think, look, we've messed up with, we have really, really messed up people's heads in a lot of ways. And so something to be, weary of and watchful for too. I do think that, the mental health burden just alone, from the pandemic, I think we're just starting to scratch the surface and figure that out. And so be watchful for that. But I would say that the thing that I did want to talk about was, managing energy. And I would say, I think that's one of the like hidden job responsibilities of a leader in sales is how do you manage and motivate, teams to bring their best every day and get the most optimal performance out of them. And I've seen it throughout my career. Like I see it show up in like survey results and, just passing conversations that I have with, folks on the team where it's like when I worked with Alex, we worked so hard. I'd never worked so hard as when I worked with Alex, but it didn't feel like I worked so hard with Alex, right? Because, in that situation that Alex, was really great at understanding like when to drive, when to slow down, when to push, how to tap into, intrinsic motivators, things like that, really helping people figure out, themselves. And so I think, when it's working, that's what it sounds like. When it's not working, I remember actually talking to a leader who was just cycling through people, right? Was just very much like iteratively, looking for that perfect, top player, And I remember I was like, sat this leader down and was actually talking to him about, what's going on here and why is it not always working, and he's like, we just keep looking for the right person and we can't find the right person, and I have to go, kind of fire the wrong person that I hire, but then they leave and they go to another company and they turn out to be this top performer, right? I remember at that moment I was like, oh, he's hearing himself, I hope, right now. And realizing that he didn't figure that out, right? He didn't understand, those motivators. He didn't know how to tap into that person's potential, right? Probably, was doing the opposite of managing energy, was actually taking away or subtracting, from their motivation to come to work. And so, back to where I started this kind of ramble here. It's a mental game that we play, and the best leaders are the ones that kind of figure this out and learn to tap into it.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, how does actually one go about doing that? Because I think it is really important. I mean, it's like a combination of you're trying to help. I mean, if you're managing a sales team, let's just give that example. If you're managing a sales team, how do you help them become a great, first off, sales professional, right? Teach them tactics, the strategies, the frameworks. How do you up level their ability to do great discovery, to give a badass demo, to negotiate, to get multi-threaded, all that sort of stuff. But then underlying that is like, how do you enroll them into wanting to do that? Like, how do you actually get them saying, hey, do this because it's going to make you feel a greater sense of fulfillment. Like you're going to find purpose in it. There's going to be meaning that actually comes with it. Like, and I feel like the people who can do that, I don't know if it's like trained. Is it innate? It's like, what is the thing that separates the great leaders from just the okay leaders or even the subpar leaders in terms of how do you actually get your people excited and enrolled into doing, what they're trying to do here?
Yeah. So many good questions that you just weaved in there artfully. So I'd say, like, let me parse through them there. And I do think like it largely is innate, but it can be taught. And I think when I say it's largely innate, it comes more natural to others, maybe, or to some. And so, if it doesn't come natural to you, find someone who does it well and learn and mirror and match and sponge. And there's lots of tactics that I'll weave into this conversation that I think, are helpful for this. And I think it starts with a couple things, but it starts with awareness, right? Like, do you care about this? And if you care about this, then can you do things to make it, kind of a priority and make sure that your team feels it's a priority? I think even like I'd be remiss before I jumped into the tactics of like how you do it with the team if I didn't say also that it starts with you. Like I think actually, the old adage of, when a plane, is going down and they talk about, putting the oxygen mask on, they talk about, put it on yourself first and then you can help others. Like you can't motivate and tap into people's energy and potential if you're not feeling it yourself, right? If you come in every day, hating life, mad at what you're doing, unhappy in your current situation, right? It's hard to inspire happiness in others. And so I'd say like, it has to start with you. Like that's like base camp to any of this stuff that we're going to talk about today, that if you can't get to centered yourself, then it's going to be really hard for you to really kind of transfer and tap into others' potential. So figure that out. And I think like, you talk a lot about this. You're great about it yourself. I think like you, one of my epiphanies with you, Alex, is like, I wish I would have met you earlier in my career, because I do think you are really on the tip of the spear of thinking about like, how can you be more self-aware as a leader? How can you be more tapped into that? And how can you find the things that really help you find that balance and get centered? And so I think it has to start there, find out what you're missing. Are you in the wrong role? Are you working for the wrong boss? Are you at the wrong company? Start to think about some of those things. How do you get to the right boss, the right company, the right opportunity? Is it in your own, kind of personal way that you're setting up your day, right? Are you coming into every day feeling chaotic? Like figure out how to get up earlier and build structure and build systems and, build in things like meditation, breath work, plunge baths, as you and I talk about as well. Like what are the things that you can do to really kind of help you kind of get to your best self? Because it has to be, kind of the kind of part and parcel to this. So getting that figured out, and then you can now move into the, the part of the, how do you tap into team's potential there, and I think a lot of people sometimes. So sorry, Alex, go ahead.
Yeah, before you dive into that, because I really want to double down on like the leading yourself thing, because I think it's such a common thing that people say. It's like, oh, well, first you need to lead it yourself, and like, yes, everybody has heard that at least 1,000 times before, but I think there's so many different modalities in terms of how one can go about leading themselves. And you mentioned a few, right? Whether it be meditation, whether it be breath work, cold plunge, visualizations, you name it. But you could go on runs, whatever it is, but you have to commit to it. And, one of the things that I remember hearing somebody say is, have a sacred space that you go to, like whether it be a chair in your office or a spot in the forest, whatever it may be, have a sacred space you go to, have a rhythm of refill in terms of how consistently are you going there. And number three, once you are there, the way that they said it, and I love this, is like grieve, feel your freaking emotions. Like, because especially right now, leadership is really hard and we're stressed and we're getting hit from multiple angles of, your team is not performing or your team is performing, but this person is not, or we got this new initiative. And it's like, if you're not creating space for yourself just to allow those emotions to come through, you're not going to be serving yourself. And therefore it's going to create a negative transmission to the team. And, second thing I would say is when it comes to enrolling people into a vision, into what motivates them, if you yourself as the leader are not enrolled, say goodbye. Like it's not going to work right there. You yourself need to say, like, I've caught myself doing this. Like there's been times I ask, one of the reps on my team is like, why are you here? Like what's really like, what's going to get you going? But if I had the same person ask me that question, I'd be like, fuck, I don't know. Like I'm just, this is my job. Like I'm trying to make money. I'm trying to like survive right here. And it's a constant like, and why am I here? There's never going to be a silver bullet answer. It's going to constantly be changing. What I answer to that question one week could vary the weeks after that. And that's okay. It's just a constant reassessing of like, why am I actually here? And if I remember this when I was at Outreach, when I was showing up with my team, I was like 2018 through 2021, like I was in it. Outreach. It was my first time in a sales leadership role. I'd been working towards that for like my entire life, it felt like. And once I was finally there, I was so in and so wanting to just build a great culture and sell a great product and all that sort of stuff that was actually the only thing that I needed to do, because then I just created the frequency that flowed down to my team. They're like, damn, Alex is excited. Our leader's excited. Hell, I'm excited now too. And so it's just, I really want to like double down of like, if we are expecting and asking our teams not to be stressed, not to be burnt out, to be excited about what they're doing, we need to first say, am I that way first? Because if I'm not, I got to check myself before I start to go pointing at my team and say, hey, why are you not hitting quota? Or why are you not in this sort of thing right here?
So much good there. No, I'll double down on your double down, but I feel like, I just feel like you're absolutely right. I do think it's often said, like, put yourself first. It's very cliche. But as servant leaders, and I think busy and professionals and just humans, doing intense jobs right now, it's easy to say, like, where can I cut corners? Where can I, sleep less? Where can I, kind of eke out more? And oftentimes it comes at the expense of you. And so don't do that. Make it a priority. Build a system that forces you to make it a priority. I think that's absolutely right there, Alex. I think that's where it fails. Like anybody can do it for a week, maybe two, but anybody you can do it for 3, 6, 12 months. That's a habit that gets formed and built and actually is, scalable and allows you to like maintain, without even thinking about it, right? It becomes like breathing there. I do think there's also like the emotions piece is huge too, that you just keyed in on. And there's a lot of things that we do that I think are kind of false narratives that maybe pop into our head. But I think it's like, in times of crisis and times like these, we got to show up with a brave face. Like we got to show up like we know everything's going to be great and that we've got it all under control, right? And I think like an element of being vulnerable will go so far these days. But I see a lot of leaders get it wrong because they think like, well, the team's looking to me in a crisis, right? I have to be this brave leader, who's impenetrable to any of this stuff that's going on in the outside world. Like, isn't phased or flapped by like, the lack of results or some of the things that are just not going our way, right? And what it does is it actually causes distrust with the team. Like they can't connect with you. It creates this this interesting dissonance where the things they're seeing and the words you're saying don't align in their brain. Like our brains are pretty simple machines, but they try and connect the things we're doing, our actions and words, with the things we're saying, and when they don't align, it causes distrust, right? And so I think folks that see you as like unemotional or in times of crisis, unflapped, not being able to like be relatable actually will backfire, blow up in your face. So I'd say like put yourself first, and also don't be afraid of your emotions. I think it's huge there.
It's actually, I mean, you nailed it right there. And it's also one of the hardest things to do.
Yeah.
So very fun story. My mom came and visited a little while ago when I was living in New York, and I had just gone through a breakup. And I, was running my community call with Alluvians, and there's probably, 20 or 30 people on this Zoom call. And I started out the call by saying, "Hey guys, like I just want to let you know, I just went through this breakup, and I'm kind of in like a fragile state in certain types of ways, and I'm processing it, and I wanted to just kind of share that openly and honestly here with y'all." And I got off, the call, and like I kind of like framed that to like lead into like how you process emotions and create space for yourself, and I wanted to exemplify that. And I got off the call, and my mom was like, "Why would you tell your community that?" Because she was sitting on the couch just like listening on my Zoom call. She's like, "Why? Like you're losing credibility. Like they're gonna look at you as like you're losing the mystique." And I'm like, "Mom, that might have been the type of leadership that was important in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. Like put them on this like, wow, you are a god and you know everything, and there's just like this, whatever, pedestal." But now what the world is craving is like, "Yo, dog, are you a human?
Yeah.
Like, can I just like relate to you? Can I have empathy for you?" And also it creates a form of dynamic leadership where just because I'm the leader doesn't mean that the people who I'm leading can't also lead me. Yeah. Right? Can't also, the amount of texts I got after that call, just be like, "Yo, dog, I'm here for you if you ever want to talk." It made me feel really held, and also empowered them to lead me. And then it just creates this like, "Hey, we're in this together" sort of thing, versus me just trying to get you guys to do something that I'm trying to get you to do.
Yeah, that's so cool that you did that. And I think you're right. There is a magical shift that's going on here, and a change in like what used to work versus what works today. And those that, look, there's folks that are, been doing this, as long as I have, if not longer, who've somewhat lost touch with probably this new audience, I have to say, because I do think they probably, mirror and match a lot of what your mom was saying there. And I think like the leaders of today show empathy, they show heart. I think it actually like dovetails well also into this conversation about the energy piece. Like, you can't tap into that energy and get people to buy in and bring, their A game every day if they don't trust you, right? And I think if you can't create that trust, then that's kind of part and parcel and really the foundation of this. And I do think what you did there was, by letting your guard down and sharing, probably opened up, the door for others to come in and share and talk about things that are going on. And we all have shit going on in our lives, right? I think that's another one of those false narratives is we all have stuff going on in our lives. Yet we want to show up every day and look like we've got it all figured out. Like it's just natural. We want to be good at our jobs, right? And so we compartmentalize a lot of these things. And then, look, there's so much being heaped on people right now. We're doing more with less. We're getting less leads, less opportunities, less share of wallet and people who want to talk to us right now in the sales community. And so like we're getting crushed from all sides, right? And if you can, talk about what's going on in your life, be able to acknowledge it and then just move through it too. Like that's so helpful, right? And so really powerful what you did. And I would actually encourage, like, if there's anything, folks take away from this is like, make sure that, you are, showing up, being vulnerable and, making it, a good place for people to be able to talk about those things. It does create connection. It doesn't, I think there's this false narrative that we have in our heads that it makes you seem weak. And it couldn't be further from the truth, right? Anytime that, that's, I've heard, folks that I kind of mentor, coach, or talk about that, say that, I honestly want to shake them because it's, it's quite the opposite, right? It actually shows some strength that you're able to talk about what you're going through. And again, it opens up, more conversation and freedom for others to feel like they can share as well.
Mm-hmm. So I kind of want to tie that into, we were talking about leading yourself and then how that translates to leading a team. And I think that, and, so you've been at Demand Base now for just about 9 months. You're the chief sales officer there, which I love Demand Base, by the way, just massive plug there. And I know we've had many conversations just about how that the product and the company is evolving and maturing and growing. And I know, a good amount of people who are at that company, and each one of them is just like a 10 out of 10 type of person. So you guys have a great and phenomenal brand there. But, prior to that, in between Canva and Demand Base, you went on a sabbatical, which is absolutely awesome. And I think I think it was you 8 or 9 months sabbatical. You even post about it on your LinkedIn. One of your titles is, sabbatical right there. And I think that's when I saw it, I was like, what a that was honestly one of my first thoughts of someone who is, at the top of the leadership, the sales game within tech, saying, hey, let me create space for myself. Let me create space for my family. I mean, you have, your 2 teenage kids, and wanting to do that. And so I would love for you to just kind of elaborate on, I guess, why did you do that? What was it like? How did you nourish yourself through that? And, also, how did that really prepare you to take on this next endeavor that you are doing now?
Awesome. Yeah, no, I'll talk about it. And I would say, before I get into what I did, I'll talk to you about kind of why I did it. Cause I think that that's important too. And it's back to, our own, kind of topic here about managing energy in ourselves. But, we talked about my time at Canva. I was working insane amount of hours. And I do feel like there's a lot of folks who, went through the pandemic and found a couple extra gears that they probably shouldn't have. I am a self-proclaimed probably workaholic. I drive a lot of satisfaction, out of working hard. I think it's probably the secret to my success in a lot of ways. So I know that about myself, but I think also when left unchecked, I can get a little bit extreme on this myself. And I found myself doing that, especially as we started to open up Europe and managing teams in Asia Pacific and the US and Europe. I was go, 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 go. And, I will say I probably pushed myself into an unhealthy zone and I didn't realize it. Thankfully I had, I've got a great partner in my wife, and that she, spotted this in me, but, she had said actually during the pandemic, at one point, that, the boys would value actually having more of my presence, right? She was like, when you're in the room, they actually are different kids, right? They're teenage boys. They're acting out. They're pushing boundaries. They're both almost 6 foot. My wife's 5 foot tall. And so, she was like, look, when you show up, they snap into line. When you're not there, they're joking, jabbing, pushing boundaries with me. And for me, Alex, that was probably that one moment where it was the knife to the heart. Cause I do feel another thing that's just kind of, my kind of personal compass is I try to be foolishly good at everything in my life, which means I fail often and I get up every day and try again. But at that time, I realized that I was failing probably in the area that I should care about the most, right? Teenage boys, my oldest was getting ready to go to college. He was a year away. And so I had this momentary thought of gosh, the last 3 years I spent at Canva, I blinked and that was his high school experience. Right. And I, found myself thinking, I'm going to miss him going off to college, and I'm going to blink again. And my youngest, who's a freshman, is going to just go right through the same cycle again. And so, it was an interesting thing, but at the beginning of the year, I had this, epiphany that I was like, it's time for me to put my family first, right? To prioritize them and take some time off. I want to go, do this. And so I went to the founders at Canva and said, hey, it's time to find my replacement. I want to make this big leap and do this. And I think actually when I told my wife I decided to do this, she gets the knife in the heart moment of telling me that I'm sucking at my job of being a father. But I think she also, gets to be the hero in the story because she was like, wow, I didn't think you would do it. Though you talked about it. And she was like, and look, the message you just sent to our kids is amazing and so powerful. And so, look, I took the leap of faith to take some time off. I will say it's, it's something I'd never done in my life. I'm sure there's a lot of folks on here who have never done this in their life, would never even think about doing this in their life. But for me, it was the most, important thing for me to do at the right time to do it. And so, thankfully, if I can give some nuggets to folks that are thinking about this too, I sucked at it in the beginning. I think if you're used to going 150 miles per hour, and all of a sudden you go to zero, it's hard. And I think, I've been doing this for 20 plus years. And so it really kind of, it was a bit of a weird moment when I stopped. And I remember the first month that I was off, people were like, making jokes and jabbing and saying, did you sleep in till noon? And I was like, no, I'm still getting up at 6 a.m. doing my thing. Like I'm pretty well trained to this process. And, I didn't realize it, but it probably took me a solid month to just deeply exhale. Like it took me a month to be able to say like, okay, be okay with doing nothing, enjoy this time, be present, be in the moment. I thankfully also had a friend who, caught me right as I was going on this journey and basically said like, look, I'm going to give you like a 3-minute drill of advice here, which is perfect for folks like me. But he was like, I need you to say no to everything for at least 2 months. He was like, I want you to just say no to everything that comes your way, because he's like, because I know you, John, and you're going to need to be needed, and you're going to feel like this, urge to replace some of these things that you've been doing with others. And he's like, so everybody's going to come to you because they're going to hear you're taking time off, and they're going to say, can you, get coffee with me? Can you mentor my startup? Can you spend time with me on this? And he's like, and you're going to say yes to everything. And he's like, and I'm going to come back to you in a month or two, and you're going to be still working 80 hours a week. And it's going to be none of the things that you care about. It's just all the stuff you let in. And so I think actually at the time he said it, I was like, oh, come on, that's easy. I don't need to do that. And I will tell you, like 2 weeks in, my wife was like, what gives? I thought you were taking time off. You're busier than you were at Canva, and I'm like, oh, I could hear his voice in the back of my head. So I'd say for those that are contemplating doing this, like get good at saying no. That was probably the toughest thing for me to do. And like I said, I thought I thought I would do it in my sleep, but I nailed screwing it up really quickly there. And so figure that piece out. I think the other thing that he gave me that was great advice was, when you do get to that equilibrium, it's going to be great because you're going to be settled. And then now you let the things in that you want to let in based on, what's important to you. And so, based on like the criteria I said, I was like, I want to be a better husband. I want to be a better father. I want to be better to myself. And so I was like, those are kind of like my big three. And if they hit those criteria, then good. If it doesn't, then it's just not going to happen probably in the next few weeks. And so it really led me to, kind of maintain focus and prioritize the right things, through the kids, my wife, through myself, like getting back in the gym and getting back to, some of my practices that I kind of let go. And so it's super helpful to kind of build that into it when you're going through this process. And then back to the being vulnerable thing, like actually, this was an interesting one. I put it on my LinkedIn, like right out of the gates, and I gave it a funny name. I called it a professional pause. And I was like, this is going to be, just some time that I take off, and, I'll put it on LinkedIn. And there was never a thought that I wouldn't, but I do think like right out of the gates, I was met by another CRO friend of mine who said, it's interesting you put it on LinkedIn. And I remember he at that time kind of transferred his own, I think guilt about this on me, or his own insecurities, where I was like, crud, should I have not put it on there? Like in my mind, all of a sudden I went to this weird, dark spiraling place of like, does this make me look weak? Does this make me look less marketable? Like, does this make me, look like somebody who doesn't care about their career or profession, right? And the answer is absolutely not. And that's the funny thing. And so I couldn't have been more happy that I did put it out there. And I'm glad like more folks like you came out of the woodwork to say like, badass, that's awesome that you did it. Like it was also a great signal to the world, because I think, as we mentioned also, like a lot of people have been through some intense stuff. I think actually professionally, personally, and they haven't really, that's the other thing about the pandemic that was really tough, was we all self-isolated in our own ways, and we all kind of like dealt with things in our own ways. And so by putting it out there, I had a lot of friends who came out of the woodwork who were like, gosh, I didn't know how to talk about this, but like my wife and I are going through a divorce, or, I've had this, kind of traumatic thing happen to me and I haven't been able to process it. And like taking off time from work, like is something that never even entered my mind, right? It didn't even seem like something was possible, and I think it's kind of silly, but I think that we're so hardwired to not even think that that's an option. That they saw me do it, and it was almost like, tell me how you did it. Like, could you just be like a little bit of a guidepost to me on this and tell me about how did you set this up? How did you get, kind of things in motion to do this, financially, how do you set your life up to take this time if you can, but also like, how do you prepare yourself mentally too for it? So I think there's so many good things that kind of came out of it. And again, it was a great example of like what you think versus reality, can be two different things. I think actually the funnier part was, I did agonize over some silly things. Like I agonized over like, what if someone asks me at a dinner party what I do? And like, what am I going to say? And like, that's the silliest thing again. Like if anybody's worried about that one, I'll just tell you, like, it was,
you're going to be the coolest guy at that dinner party by saying, oh man, this is a professional pause.
Yeah. So anyways, that was a good thing there. And the even funnier part was like, I really did commit to take some time off. I do think I talked to a lot of folks who say they want to do this, and like it all is personal situation driven, right? And you have to be able to make sure that you kind of set your life up to do this. But I have a few friends who've been like, yeah, I'm going to take a month or two off, and a month or two off is tough to do, unfortunately. And I've done it because I just feel like by the time you wind down and then you start looking for another job, it's really no time off, right? I think honestly, like, you switch from one to the other. So it's kind of like the person who says they want to go to Europe and they buy a ticket to London and they fly to Heathrow Airport and they get off the plane and then they get on a plane and fly back to the US. Like that's what a 1 or 2 month, kind of break can be, is it sometimes doesn't allow you that time to really, kind of deeply exhale, like I mentioned, and actually be able to be present and get those, kind of great benefits out of it. Everybody has to do what's right for them, but I think that's what I encourage people is to do more. And so I, kind of had said, I want it to be 3 to 6 months. Like I won't put kind of an end date on this, because I don't want to have this intentional, like looming over my head, like I've got to get back to work right now kind of, piece here. And I think the funniest part about it was recruiters were reaching out to me, and I first took some recruiter calls, but I was like, hey, I'm not ready to go back, but keep me in mind for future. And, it doesn't work. Recruiters are salespeople. They want to get you in a job. And so I think actually they were like, no, meet with this founder, come meet with this person. Like they want to meet with you right away. Like, I know you're not ready to come back, but just have a conversation. And so I was like, I got to stop having those conversations in general. So I avoided all the sales calls from recruiters, and it kind of built this weird mystere where they were like, a friend who was a recruiter reached out and was like, hey, in the recruiter community, everybody's like wondering what's up with you. Like, why do you not want to work? Because like now they really want you to work, like because you don't want to work, And I was like, oh, that's so funny. What I was fearful was a weakness. Turned out to be the most, best guerrilla marketing tactic I could cook up in my head there. So anyway.
Man, they all wanted to say like, hey, how can I get the job that's going to make him want to leave his professional pause right there.
Yeah.
Oh, man. So there's a few things that you said that I really love is, first off, you said, what a great example that you are then able to set for your children, right? Of like, hey, I'm here to take some time off. And I think that's just, kudos to you for doing that, of just like, hey, you truly did put you backed it up of like, I put my family first right here. And the second thing you said is like, it took you a month, maybe 2 months to actually settle in. And I think, as leaders, as sales professionals, we're very achievement oriented. That's a wonderful part of us. It's a very go, go, go sort of thing. And it's also can hurt us, right? It like prevents us from actually just like dropping in and being in the moment and just like settling where we're at. It's like, even related to like, once you hit quota, guess what? That next quarter is going to be even higher and you're going to have to push even further. And then again and again. So it's like, there's never the time just to be like, yo, can we just settle and enjoy where we are at? And, you also said something about satisfaction. I just listened to a phenomenal podcast with a Harvard psychologist. I can't remember his first name, I think Andrew Brooks or something like that. We talked about satisfaction comes from doing something incredibly hard and achieving it, and then doing more hard things and achieving it. It's like the satisfaction comes from the doing the hard shit right there. And I think that was just a great example that you said throughout that. I have maybe a honest, direct question. So many people, I would say, aspire to be a chief revenue officer, chief sales officer. Yet when I look at people who are in the chief sales, chief revenue officer role, they are busy, man. Like y'all are doing a ton. Y'all are leading teams, you're selling, you're evangelizing, you're talking to the board. The list goes on. You're recruiting, all of it. And so when you took your professional pause, has that changed now how you show up within the corporate world? Like the type of leader you are now, is that different than the type of leader you were before when you took your professional pause? How are you bringing that into your day to day?
Yeah. Good question. And the honest answer on this is all these things shape and change us, right? And I do think it's given me a different way. I haven't changed as a person. I would say as a leader, folks on my team, maybe I would hope that, 3 companies ago would say I'm the same leader today as I was then, or still certain elements of me are the same. But I do think like the way that I manage my own headspace, really has shifted and changed in a really good way. The way I think about, work and balance too, I think is interesting too. And I think that's another cliche one that we could totally beat around for a bit here, the work-life balance myth. But I think there is, there is a way to be able to do all the things, well, and you have to be able to put those guards and protections, up there and be able to put guardrails for yourself. And if you're someone like me who just, wants to win at all costs and like will pour more of myself into a problem and we'll just go, right? Like knowing when to stop and when to put in some of these kind of protections for yourself, like I'm mentioning here. I think those are the keys. And then being able to spot that in others. Like I do think, some of the things that I really enjoy about what I'm getting to do, I'm in extra innings right now. Like I am, in awe with folks like you, Alex, and like this new school and crew of, up and coming leaders. But, this is probably like my, I'd say first or second to last, gig that I'll probably have. And it's kind of nice to be in that spot. Knowing that and like actually say like, look, I'm going to just do this and I'm going to have fun. Right. I think it actually changes my perspective a little bit about this. I want to help set the stage for folks like you, Alex, and others to come, after me and, take this place even further, faster, and evolve as kind of a new school of sales leaders out there. But yeah, I would say it definitely, changes my mindset. Whereas probably, and that's the stuff that you can't see on the outside, but the stuff that's inside, this crazy thing, probably, would show up more as I'm having fun. Right. And I realize that. And I also am able to realize it in others here and help them, through some of these things.
Well said. Well said. So I have one final question for you before we hop off this thing. But before we do, I just want to acknowledge you, man. I love just receiving your leadership, receiving your wisdom. I think what you are doing, whether it be a demand base or just kind of overall the brand that you have, it's admirable. It's also warm and welcoming. There's some chief sales officers who I speak with. I speak with a decent amount just through work and whatnot. It's like they're terrifying, man, and they're kind of mean, and they're very achievement goal oriented. And while that stuff is definitely important, you bring such a warm and welcoming. It's like, hey, I'm here to be a good guy, and so just I appreciate that, and I appreciate the mentorship, and I'm stoked for the many more walks around Lady Bird Lake and the cold plunges and all that sort of good stuff that we get to have here. So my last question for you is this. The show is called the Rising Leader Podcast. What do you view as the rising leader?
Man, I think it's a lot of like what we've talked about. I think the rising leader is someone who's in tune with themselves, right? They're self-aware. They understand, all the things that we talked about, like how to tap into their own, self-drive, worth, and, potential here. And then they're able to transfer that to their teams, right? And help them tap into and figure out, those things. I think that's the ones that really, speak to me when I hear that title there. The folks that really invest as well into, setting their teams up to be more successful than them, right? I actually became a people leader before I became a parent. And I quickly learned that my philosophies about parenting and people leadership weren't too far apart. And that's, it's kind of, fun to realize there. But, as a parent, like I want my kids to see and achieve things that I didn't achieve. But I don't want it to be, I want them to have it, easier than I did, but not so easy that they don't feel like they have that feeling of accomplishment, right? They've got to earn it and they've got to feel like, they deserve what they achieve there. And I also want them to, look, I want them to think of me as like, not such a, always a hard ass. I'm sure they'd probably say that I'm hard, but fair. And like, I hope that if you were to interview my teams, like that's the same thing that I would say. So I think that, the folks that can really figure that out, that understand that and want their teams to achieve more things than they ever achieve. Like those are the ones that will get ahead. And, actually their teams will go on and do great things. The legacy they'll leave, behind will be even more massive. And so, those are kind of I would say, a few kind of stories, anecdotes, and thoughts of what I think of when I hear that name.
Aho, man. Aho. Well, hey, John, I appreciate you joining. And for all the listeners who joined us here, thank you once again. And if you know anybody who needs to hear this pod, receive the wisdom of Mr. John Eitel, make sure you share it with them and click subscribe on Spotify. But with that, have a wonderful day. Thank you, John.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks for listening to the Rising Leader Podcast. Make sure you hit that follow button so you get notified every time a new episode releases. If you know someone who wants to take their lives and their career to the next level, send them this episode so we can all rise together. For more information, check out alluviance.co. We'll see you next time. And in the meantime, keep letting it flow.